Yes, the preseason is in our rearview mirror. Thank you very much. We can start to look ahead to the Eagles and the Patriots. Here to help us do that while looking back to last night's 60 minutes of action. Might have been not all that action back,
What
but
we got to get the analytics on how much action there was in that game, Chris Franklin.
Yeah, action's definitely a word. We go that one, but you know what? For us, it went long and long for those guys that were on the field. Though they were playing for their livelihood and their jobs. So
yeah, man, Ben Van Sumeren just got another tackle.
Wait, is that him over there?
8 yards down the field, but
I'm afraid he's going to hit me right now. It kept seeming like he was going around. It's the Alex Singleton hits tackles. That's what it seemed like they were.
Yeah.
He did play well last night, and if he gets through waivers, I think he's almost a lock to be on this practice squad. But I'll go the other way, and a guy who the preseason, probably at least the last 2 weeks, have gone away that he can't be happy with, and that's Kayvon Wallace. I think you came out with, I know John said to me several times the first couple of weeks before the preseason started, either the games or the scheduled practices, that Wallace was playing well. Man, he's falling down the charts. He's still out there with 30 seconds to go in the game last night. Is there any chance that now he's a very good special teams guy, and they've already taken special teams hits this year. Is there any chance Kayvon Wallace could be on the cutting room floor?
Yeah, I think 8 of those safeties that were on the field last night, besides we all know Reed Blankenship, he didn't do that, but I think 8 of them right now are in position to do that because we all kept seeing them get first team snaps throughout the rest of the last few training camp practices.
Yeah.
You look at Wallace. I will say this: Wallace, for me, I know I feel like he's always been my crossers looking like why he's in the field, but he really has improved, and I think it's to the point where I think he remains here this year. I think you mentioned special teams, given the lack of experience they have on those units, and given the issues we see, like it's still a lot of young guys. They may have to put some vets who don't typically play those positions. At least with Wallace, a guy who can run down the field, who knows his assignment and get down there, and he'll be okay with that. So I look at it between, are you going to? I think it's a thing you worry about. Do they keep 5 safeties on this roster and maybe go light somewhere else because, especially with how many safeties they use on the field at times, that big nickel. So I think it's a possibility. I put it probably as 55-60% he stays.
Yeah, I would think they almost have to keep all 5. And in Kayvon's case, I think it became even more clear when they lost both Zach McPherson and Sean Bradley. So all of a sudden, he becomes even more important to special teams. And Justin Evans is the guy who made sort of the late push as a potential starter. That's the most interesting. Like, I think we're pretty locked down on everything else on this team. Even running back, I think, Kenny Gainwell has sort of stepped forward, at least in as I call the high leverage spots. But safety, opposite Reed Blankenship, I got no idea, Chris. Week 1, I say it this way: competency, Terrell Edmonds versus coverage, Justin Evans versus upside, Sidney Brown. That's, I think, the decision. Or go trade for somebody else.
Yeah, and that's the wild card in the whole entire thing, because we always know they're talking and they're tinkering and trying to look around the league, because there's going to be some guys that are going to be available pretty soon. So I really think it could be a possibility they can look out. But I think I think Edmonds, if they don't, Edmonds, I don't think you can see all 5 there for it, but definitely I think Edmonds, Blankenship, Brown, and then probably Wallace over Evans.
Would if you had a chance to catch me, I don't know if he thought, I didn't see any quotes from him, but if you had the chance to ask Trey Sermon, do you think he would have said, yeah, 10 would have been enough, 12 carries max, 16 carries?
Yeah, I don't think that's a good. I don't think it's a good sign for Trey Sermon that they only dressed 2 running backs, Trey Sermon and Kennedy Brooks, and he got so many carries. I mean, that's and I hate to use that term, but I always use the term crash test dummy preseason 3. You know, they're trying to
Yeah.
protect the other guys, and poor Trey Sermon's got to go out there and get hit 16 times.
16 times.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was shocking when you see them all running out and you see like all the other guys who aren't dressed and looking around and you see the two just going back and trying to warm up. It's like, yeah, guys, we're feeding to the Lions. Good luck with this one. So yeah, I was shocked. Like I thought maybe they dressed maybe one more like a penny or something like that, but it goes to show you where that competition is right now. And the fact he only averaged like 1.9 yards per carry
Yeah.
behind that line, that
He
was
had a
rough.
long of 6, though, Chris.
You know that very memorable there, game breaking. Nah, but yeah, I thought he'd be a guy who would make it tougher, especially with one of those spots. But it can show you how good Penny became and started to learn this offense. And I think if anything, you're now looking at Sermon. The question is going to be: is he going to be clear waivers? Because teams like the Colts are going to need somebody to in that backfield.
That's
with
true.
experience.
The Colts are interesting because of Shane's presence. But I got to believe there's other teams out there with better running backs. But I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how that shakes out. One thing I threw at Jody earlier, and I want to throw it by you, because a lot of people look at Aaron Cepas and they don't want Aaron Cepas here to be the punter. But I looked at it from the perspective of Jake Elliott nailing 59-yard field goals that could have been good from 65 and 52-yard field goals like it was nothing. And he just trusts Aaron Cepas as the holder. And if you go back to the Baltimore game, the one time they gave Zentner a chance to hold, it was a perfect hold. It wasn't his fault. He missed the kick.
Yep. It kind of feels like another number 10 that was here when he came to Coy Detmer when he was working with David Akers, and I don't know, maybe it's about something about that number where they feel comfortable with holding. But yeah, that in itself, that field goal operation, you wonder if that's the main reason why he's still here, because his punts, even the one last night that went like 30 yards and they had to bounce 11, 12 yards.
Though,
yeah, that was rough to watch, and we'll see. And he hasn't sustained it for a long period of time. He'll start like 2 years ago. He starts the season well, and then all of a sudden it fizzles down the line. And I don't know if he's going to still continue to be able to do that. And I wouldn't be surprised if they look out, like especially if Arizona. I wouldn't be surprised if some of the other areas see who comes on the waiver wire, because even though it is very, very important to do that, and you don't want to see your punter on the field a lot, and if anything, maybe 2-3 times, I still think they're still going to be looking out there, and holding's going to be required.
I don't think they want to mess with Elliott. I think they're like, punter's not that important. Who cares? We're not going to punt. We're past the 50. We're going to go for it all the time. Boy, I think they're just going to say, we don't want to mess with Jake Elliott with a new holder. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, excuse me for interrupting. The only thing I have to look at is when Brett Kern came back in there last year, they did all right, and they held it. Now, granted, he's a veteran.
The question I was going to ask: were they that bad with Kern last year?
No, that's
true. Did Elliott have a slump?
But
or was it just the one missed kick he had this year?
No, that's true with Brett Kern. That's a good point. But I would say that Brett Kern is also Methuselah and has been doing it for 75 years. By the way, a former Pro Bowl punter. He's a bit different than a young guy coming in who hasn't been doing it as long as him. And that, in theory, would be, I think, what we'd be talking about. I don't think we'd be talking about another Brett Kern type at the end of a Pro Bowl punting level career. So I think we'd be talking about a young guy. So a Zentner type guy, which is a little bit different than Brett Kern. This would be my counter argument.
Yeah, it's in one of those things like this. When you look at the free agency list, there's nobody that's really out there that grabs you like, wow, all right, you need this guy or a future like a Pro Bowl type or one of the top 10 punters that are out there. And you ain't going to trade a pick for a punter or something like that too. So
a lot of fans want Matt Ariza, who would obviously punt the ball very well. But I don't know about the other stuff. I don't know if the Eagles want to go down that route. He's
Yeah, he's just-
interested. I know that.
All right. I went down this road with John and Scott Grayson before, and now I'm going to take you down it too, Chris.
Uh-oh.
Last night, one guy with his level of play in the third preseason game, which I know its level of importance and how much stock the Eagles put into it. But this guy was good enough throughout the preseason and specifically last night. I think Eli Ricks moved the needle enough to go from a guy they try and sneak through waivers to get to the practice squad to, we gotta keep him on the roster, because if we do, he's gonna be snapped up by somebody else. Do you think there was that he showed enough last night that could actually be a conversation the Eagles are having this morning?
I think Eli Ricks could be one of the gems that, like the unsung gems that they signed off the offseason that makes this roster. I really believe that. I look at the way the coverage he plays, the way he plays inside, the way he even baits receivers into thinking which way he's going to go, and then he's able to be able to stick them pretty well. He's physical enough to do that. I like it a lot. And supposedly, like, really, Goodrich has that injury, the hamstring injury. Maybe it's one of those things where we see and maybe it's creative roster usage right now. He's starting to see some stuff but I look at him and I think, you know what? I think it's a guy somebody's gonna pick him up, and we know how valuable corners are. Those edge parts of defense, corners, edge rushers, everything else, how valuable they are. I think he's played his way onto this roster, and I think he could be really good. In fact, I think I'd say he's played better than Ringo at this point so far.
I agree with that, but they can't. That's my problem. They can't cut Ringo. We know they're not cutting Ringo. I don't think Ringo's played well at all.
Ringo starts with development.
I think he's gotten a little bit better on special teams. Maybe that could be his role early, but I think Mekhi Gardner's had a better summer. Maybe Eli showed up in the games a little bit more. Certainly, again, the Baltimore game he was fourth team playing against a fourth string quarterback, and he got the pick six. So I didn't put much stock into that. But yesterday was better. And as I said to Jody, I hesitated, which I don't like to do with the third preseason game. I try to ignore it as much as possible. And I said, yeah, he's making a nice little push here. But I think the body of work for Mekhi Gardner's been better. And I don't think he's making the team. So how does Eli Ricks make the team? I don't.
And I like Gardner a lot. I thought he gets a little handsy sometimes.
He does.
But
it's good that he's very physical you don't see many physical corners coming out now. At least certainly not undrafted. Maybe the top tier guys, but he's very physical. So there's some good to that as well. But you mentioned Goodrich, right? We know they're keeping Slade Bradbury, Josh Jobe, Calais Ringo. And then you need two slot corners, Avante and insert name, which would be Goodrich if he's healthy. Can he keep 7 corners? I can't keep 7 corners.
If you can I think you could justify it special teams wise. I think this could be one of those 53s where we see it's heavy on the defensive side. Maybe they go back, they take one less offensive lineman. But I think it's one of those things where it maybe could be a little bit more heavier, skewing towards that side because of the injuries that have occurred on that side of the ball, and because of special teams. And there's a lot of talent, especially on the edge rusher. Maybe one's traded away. I mean, maybe that's how they solve one of those.
Yeah. And by the way, you bring that up. The one name we brought up, I should have mentioned this earlier too, and Jody and I discussed it. Kentavious Street not playing. That shocked me. That was the one name. Maybe a little Suo Peta. I'm like, why isn't Suo out there? But Street even more so, because I think they're deeper on the defensive line. What do you think that was about? Kentavious Street not playing?
Versatility. That's the only thing, because he could play defensive tackle and defensive end. And I know Morrow's coming, like he's working his way back from that concussion, but I think his versatility, being able to align in different areas. I think that's a key thing, especially as a veteran defensive tackle. And I thought he played okay in the games. He played decent, like okay to decent in the games. Nothing like, wow, look at this way. He got a lot of pressure every time, and he was a force in the middle. So it could be. I look at it as more as things like, okay, he's a veteran presence who can move around the defensive line if you need to. Maybe he's on the inactive list, but he's still there, and you roll with maybe move on from another guy. And I'm trying to think of a defensive tackle you really move on to from, but you maybe two below two. I just, even then, it's like he's a nose tackle who probably will be on the inactive list a lot. So, it was a surprise for sure.
John mentioned earlier about potentially doing some roster games by playing with their long snapper. Just tell them, hey, listen, you know we love you. You're signed. We got to release you. You'll be on waivers. You're a veteran. You'll be back in 24 hours. We're not cutting you, but we got to cut you. And they would not the first time they did it, not the first time it's done across the league. It's been done before. Where's that other spot on this roster? And could the third quarterback be part of it? Can they get Tanner McKee through waivers is the question I'm asking you. Could they cut both Ian Book and Tanner McKee?
I don't think somebody's going to snap him up. I think the way that he's played, that tape's out there, and people have seen that. And yeah, he's played too well for him to even try a risk like that. That's ooh. I think you're looking at like maybe an offensive lineman, maybe do it like, hey, listen,
Yeah,
we like
I
you.
agree. You can't hide quarterback. You can't hide quarterback. Like that's the worst thing about Eli Ricks. Like I wish he didn't play as well as he played, because that's the kind of guy you want to hide and get on the practice squad, and you don't want to make him plays in the preseason. With a quarterback, you just can't hide a quarterback, and teams are desperate for quarterbacks. Yeah, he's a guy I would say there's no way you get him through waivers.
Yeah, he's gonna be snapped up with a quickness. Maybe you go one of the maybe you go. I know definitely offensive line for sure. Maybe you go, hey, Britton, listen, we're going to let you go, say somebody else, and bring him back that way too. Somebody, I think you can maybe get him through waivers too. So, yeah, but damn, McKee's played too well to risk that part of that.
Offensive line. I got 8 solidified. The 5 starters, which we all know. I hope you know. Jack Driscoll, Tyler Steen, and who am I missing?
Fred Johnson.
Fred Johnson, thank you. 2-year contract. That solidified him. And then I think they're going to keep 9. And to me, it comes down to Sua Opeta versus Josh Sills. And Jeff Stoutland's already screwed me once with Josh Sills losing the 53-man roster pool. Is he going to do it again? Because Sua Opeta is he didn't dress, so he was a deference player. He's been ahead of Josh Sills. Doesn't have as much versatility as Josh Sills, who can play basically everywhere. You remember first caught Stoutland's eye when both left tackles were hurt last year, and they stuck him out at left tackle. That's a tough decision for me. Sua Opeta versus Josh Sills, or maybe somebody else.
Did Sills play last
Opeta,
night?
No,
Both of them sat.
No, Sills started.
Sills started. That's what.
No, he didn't even start. He was on the second team. I bet Julian Good Jones started. So Sills was on the second team offensive line yesterday. And Sua didn't dress. That's got to bode well for Sua, right?
I would tend to think.
Yeah, and they hesitated when they had to release him last year because they had to make some moves to bring some people on the roster. They hesitated in trying to waive him because they like him because they were afraid that teams are going to snap him up. He can play both guard spots. He started a few games for his team.
Remember a couple of years ago, Miami tried to sign him off the practice squad. The Eagles had to elevate him and put him on the roster.
And they really like him. Really, really like him. And it goes to show you, you thought Dennis Kelly would have been like the guy who you're like,
Yeah.
wow, he's that. But it doesn't look. He didn't look the same. He hasn't.
No.
But I think I really think Sua gets the nod. Josh is especially when he inside. I guess he's just those bigger power rushers on the inside. He's had issues with them getting leverage on him, and he's giving up a lot of pressure in there. So
Well, there's a
yeah, I
name
think
we never talk about, and I just brought up Julian Good-Jones.
Mhm.
He started at left guard yesterday. It was Fred Johnson, Julian Good-Jones, Josh Andrews, Tyler Steen, Dennis Kelly. That was the starting offensive line. He can play guard and center.
I was going to say, if you had to say Andrews against him for center, who would you say is the better backup center?
I go with Andrews. I go with the veteran guy who can still play guard as well too. And Good Jones did not have a good start to that game at all.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a lot of frustration on there too. I saw like he's to me, you see the traits why they wanted to keep him, but I don't think he's anywhere close yet as to being a guy you can feel comfortable enough putting on the 53. I think he's back on he's another guy that's going to be back on the practice. Like he's going to be another second year practice squad guy because he'll be good. He'll give a good look.
Depth on the offensive line is very good right now. You saw, by the way, we talked about Trey Sermon. The poor guy's got 16 carries for 30 yards. There's no room. There was no room for Trey Sermon. This Eagles backup offensive line isn't as good as what we're used to. I'm a little concerned with that, especially with the aging players. And we've seen it before when Lane Johnson got hurt at the end of the Doug Peterson era. They went off the rails.
Yeah.
They had 2 injuries at the end of the Andy Reid era. They went off the rails. That could really disrupt things if they get the wrong injuries on this offensive line, because I just don't see, for all the criticism of Andre Dillard, that was a really good backup. Cam Jurgens, as a rookie, was a really good backup from a talent perspective. Well, Cam's a starter now, and Andre's in Tennessee making $10 million. They don't have that this year. Is that a concern of yours?
Yeah, because I think they can get by with one injury because you can just plug in Driscoll and you'll be okay. You lose 2 injuries, and especially to like say Mailata, left tackle. I like Fred Johnson the way he's playing right now, but there's a drop off between Mailata and Johnson. So if you lose him too, I think you're really looking at a very questionable season from here on out. Because how many times have we seen every year whenever there's an Eagles lineman that's released, like say Kaoya Awosika, Jack Anderson, people are running to pick him up.
Yeah,
you don't see that guy this year. There's too many question marks when it comes there. So they need those guys up front to stay healthy, because if not, Jalen Hurts might be running a lot more than what they really want him to do.
All right, Chris, if I asked you this the last time we had you on, I apologize for asking it again. But with every passing opportunity they have to show, be it in a joint practice or, well, not really last night in the game, because the guys who I'm going to ask you about all got deference and didn't play. Last year's defense, no, it was Gannon's defense, but it was a Fangio defense, and that helped to get decide the job. They had their starting linebackers, and they played basically every snap. They had their starting safeties, and when they were in the game, CJ injury, they played every snap. The backups didn't play. There was no situational substituting at either of those positions. Up until a couple of days ago, Cunningham's outstanding in his couple of joint practices is, I think, pretty much stamped himself as the starting other linebacker. But we're only 7 days removed from going, who's starting with Nakobe Dean? Are we going to get the same setup at those 2 positions? Are the guys who win the jobs going to be out there every single play? Or will the new defensive coordinator think about doing some situational substitution, that maybe there's something that Ellis does better than Cunningham, and if we've got it locked in on a down and think the other team's going to try and do that, let's try and get them on the field? We know it's safety. John just described the 3 different safeties and what their strong suit is. Do you think we're going to see more substituting at those positions this year than we did last year for the Birds?
I do. I think Dean's going to be a 3-down linebacker. I think you're going to see him with that. But everything else, I wouldn't be surprised if you threw in Morrow. You see Morrow, and Cunningham all rotate in that off the ball backer, especially at safety, depending on the situation. I wouldn't be surprised if you see whoever they keep. That you definitely see Reed and Edmonds back here at back deep. Maybe you bring Sidney Brown in certain passing downs and have him lurk around close to the line of scrimmage and use his aggressiveness to in that type of way. I think it's gonna be a lot, especially it's already matchup driven when it comes to his coverage schemes and when guys passing off the receivers and knowing and communication. I think part of that way is going to include bringing in the guys off the bench, and that's where that communication is going to have to be. I mean, I thought it was interesting that they worked more and more like more sideline stuff this training camp, where they worked on the substitutions because we all know that play that happened in the Super Bowl where you got upset about wide receiver coming on like not the right substitution. So they worked on that a lot. I wouldn't be surprised if that's a byproduct of that to see more substitution groups start to come in there.
Yeah, I'm getting tired of this defensive scheme, by the way, Chris. I'm
Get
tired of it.
You've
I'm
been
No
tired of
special
him since
plays.
we started Bert's 365, Johnny Mac.
tired. Man, we saw now, granted, it's 3rd and 14 players for the most part. But how many blown coverages did we see? I mean, I don't get these coaches sometimes. I don't get. I mean, to me, you get a high level athlete. We'll use Eli Ricks as an example. You know, former 5-star recruit, coming out of high school. Obviously, he's got physical gifts, and when he's matched up 1-on-1 with Michael Pittman, who's a pretty good receiver, Alec Pierce, who's solid, you know, he makes a play, and people start to notice. And then you tell him to use these, you know, mix zones and with man, you know, principles and, you know, all this overloading and, oh, you know, they blow a coverage and you're like, why? Point at the guy. Hey, you got Chris Franklin. You got Jody McDonald. You're a great athlete. Go stick to him. You know, it's ironic because I get killed for being a Jonathan Gannon fan, which I am. I love the guy. I freely admit. I don't like this scheme. I've never liked this scheme. I think it's too complicated, especially for younger players. The guys who succeed in this scheme are the veteran savvy players. You know, look at Patrick Peterson in Minnesota last year. Had a great season, the only defensive back. Why? Because he's 160 years old and he knows everything and has seen everything and he understands that stupid defense. Give me Wink Martindale. We were just talking about Isaiah Simmons. Eagles fans wanted him, Chris. He'd be a disaster in this scheme. A disaster. In that defense, he can go straight ahead and be a wrecking ball. Like, put Sidney Brown with Wink Martindale. Put Sidney Brown with Brian Flores, and you might have something. Put Sidney Brown with this crap, and you're going to have blown coverages all over the place. I'm sorry.
See,
I'm on no sleep.
I get so like, oh, whoa, you're passionate about it. That's it. What goes there. But when I look at the defense, it does skew more towards the veteran guys because with all the Fangio schemes, you see the rotations trying to confuse the quarterback with the coverages and everything. The way they're going is like, wow, it looks like it's definitely unique when it comes to that stuff. But I also think you can't. I don't think you can go the Wink Martindale route because with all the blitzes, it's just going to be a bunch of quick passes, get them out, and you just go from there. And we've seen them get burned so many times with that as well too. I think if they can find a happy medium, I think that would be cool. And I'm really curious. And we saw it a couple times last night because I wonder if Desai was just getting frustrated with the first team still being out there. That they did use a little bit more blitzing than normal. So maybe there's going to be a combination.
It's not just the blitz, though, because I'm not a big blitz guy. I think the dumbest thing in the world is if you're getting 70 sacks to blitz. I mean, you know, if you got a front that can get home, I'm not talking about blitzing. That to me is a separate. I think people that complain about this team blitzing are just missing the point. I mean, You don't if you don't need to blitz, you don't blitz. The only reason you blitz is if you need to blitz. And occasionally, if you want to throw a curveball at the quarterback. To me, it's not about that. It's just simplifying things and making people play fast. Whether it's Tony Dungy or Leslie Frazier, those guys. Simplify things and let them play fast. Don't make them think, especially younger players.
Yep.
That to me is the way to go.
All right, Chris Franklin, let's end on this note. Prediction time. 2-part question.
Okay.
Number 1, the leading sack man for the Eagles in game 1, under over 1.5, which I know we can have a push because they split sacks from time to time. But will an Eagle defender get 2 sacks week 1? And number 2, if they do, who's going to get the 2 sacks?
I'm gonna go. Yeah, and I'm gonna go Josh Sweat. I think he's played well. I think he gets it. One, I think it's going to be like earlier on, and then one, I think the Eagles are going to be up by like 10. It's going to be like the fourth quarter.
Tell me the score, baby. If they're up 10, yeah, it's over. If they're down 10, I'm going under.
Yeah, that's the way. But I think Sweat's trying to even be one of those guys who increases his number. I think he's been that good. He got that defensive line.
Great summer, Josh Sweat. Great summer.
Good pick.
Really good player. With sack, though, I'm always picking Haas. I'm always picking Asad Reddick. He's going to get the most sacks. And he's going to be healthy, or so they tell us.
Right. I was going to say, until he gets whatever's off his finger, you don't know. So that's why I like Franklin's selection. Christopher, always a pleasure. Thank you for doing it. You know how much we're going to talk to you during the season. Enjoy your couple of days where you get to take a deep breath before you got to really get to work.
And take a nap. How much sleep you get? How much sleep you get?
She went to bed at 5:30. Like
5:30. Are you spitting me?
No, I watched it. Like I like to really get into the game and really start to break it down. So yeah, after this, I'll probably take a quick little nap after this, and then get right back up and get back at it.
I had gone to bed and gotten back up before you ever got to bed at all. Jesus, you're dedicated, Franklin. That's why we love you. Thanks very much for jumping in with us. Thanks,
Chris.
Thanks, guys, for having me on. I appreciate it.
NJ.com, by the way. Make sure at C Franklin News on X.
NJ.com is where you can find all of Frank. And extensive. He's got to be writing up a storm if he's staying up till 5:30 to break down film. Jesus,
man, that is above and beyond.
Seriously, more seriously than I am. But
somebody in the comments said I take the preseason game too seriously. You don't know me, man. I don't take it at all seriously.
Did they not?
When I ask questions of other people, that doesn't mean I take it. Jody and Scott Grayson and Chris Franklin think Eli Ricks is going to make this team. I do not.
All right, I'll explain to you why you're wrong about that.
I could be wrong, but I'm just saying.
I'll explain it to you when we come back. We're going to take a quick time out, and I'm going to explain it to you. Mac and Mac here on Birds 365.